Let me tell you a true story. Mine. I'm not chasing views. I just need it out of my head. If you've ever crawled home after a graveyard shift, alone on a 2 a.m. highway under sodium orange lights and foam-thick fog, you know the feeling. The car turns into a tiny apartment and the world stretches out like an empty hallway. I know a lot of you have felt something similar. Your turn signal falling into step with a stranger, a cheap nightlight flickering like a metronome, your breathing quietly sinking to a sound you can't place. If any of that rings even a little true, keep listening. This is exactly how it happened. No dialogue, no dressing it up, just the road and the fog. I used to work nights at a small dive bar parked between a trucking depot and a self-storage place. The kind of joint where the neon beer signs never get turned off and the fryer oil always smells a day too old. By the time I mopped, counted the drawer, and rolled the trash to the alley, it was routine to hit the road at 2 a.m. The drive home was muscle memory. Out past the loading docks, onto the county blacktop, merge onto the state route, and let the speed hold steady like a metronome. The world at that hour is all sodium vapor orange and empty lanes. I liked it, mostly. It felt like being the last person awake in a grocery store after closing. Everything mine and nobody to argue. The night this started, the fog came in wrong. I've seen river fog and the kind that pools in low lots after a storm, but this was foam thick and tight to the glass, like someone pressed a white bedsheet over the windshield. My headlamps didn't punch through it, they bounced back, and the high beams made it worse, scattering a glitter that left my eyes working too hard. The lane markings went dull. The rumble strip came up under the tires more than once and rattled the steering column like a warning to pay attention. Somewhere near mile marker 13, there's a little reflector there that always looks like a coin when you see it from the right angle. I picked up a yellow blink off to my right, just outside the thickest fog. It wasn't a headlight, it wasn't a flash from the dash. It was that construction barricade color, safety yellow, the same shade as a cheap caution light. It stayed put relative to me, same corner of my vision, same distance, ticking on and off like it had its own plan. I adjusted my hands on the wheel by habit. The blink settled into my new rhythm like it had been waiting for me to make a move. That bothered me in a way I feel stupid admitting. Plenty of things out there can blink. Mailbox reflectors, farm lights, a janky school zone beacon someone forgot to switch off. But the way it kept time with me got under my skin. I cut the radio to kill reflections. The cabin went tomb quiet, and with the noise gone, the air felt heavier. The vents pushed a breath that smelled faintly metallic, like the tang you get after a spark jumps a gap. I eased back on the speed. The blink didn't drift. It didn't close or fade. It hung there, patient and polite, like a car pacing you in the next lane, so long you wonder who's driving it. The longer I watched, the brighter it seemed. No, not brighter, closer. Like a porch light that suddenly belongs to your own house. My stomach pulled itself into a hard little knot. The engine cut out without fanfare, the way an appliance dies when the breaker trips. The tach fell to 0. The dash went black. The headlamps smothered and the road erased into chalk. I coasted until the tires grated over the raised dots and stopped. For a beat, I just sat with my hands at 10 and 2, listening to the tiny ticks that happen in a hot car when it cools too fast. That blink outside kept counting, steady as a heartbeat I didn't consent to share. The key turned, but nothing caught. Second try. A relay made a dry click, and then silence. A faint red battery icon winked awake and went dead again. Out to the right, the yellow swelled until I could feel it through my eyelids. I closed them anyway and watched the glow press red through the blood vessels like the way you can see sunlight with your eyes shut. When I opened them, the yellow was gone. Not farther away, gone. The fog was back to being only fog. The engine came back on the next try as if nothing had happened. The gauges climbed, the AC coughed, the radio rebooted on low volume with an ad for a payday loan place. I drove home doing little corrections with my fingers, trying not to think about the fact that the only thing I had changed the first time was looking at it. In my driveway, the hood looked normal under the porch light until I caught a weird sheen in the paint. Dead center was a faint ring the size of a dinner plate, a brownish halo like the clear coat had blistered and settled. When I ran a fingertip over it, the surface felt slightly gritty, like lacquer someone dried with a space heater. I took photos because that's what you do when you want to convince yourself you're not inventing things. In the morning, I drove it to a shop off the highway, the kind of place with an old Pepsi machine out front that never works and a calendar with muscle cars from 10 years ago. The mechanic pulled the relays, sniffed them, tapped a screwdriver handle against plastic, and shrugged. Nothing was obviously fried. The hazard light fuse had blown, which happens. He replaced it. He called the scorch a heat blemish and told me to keep an eye on it with a tone you use for weather you can't do anything about. The receipt had overload traces on lighting relay, written in code only mechanics understand. It felt like getting a doctor's note that says you're within normal limits when you know you're not. I decided against taking the county road the next night, but the GPS on my phone kept suggesting the faster route, shaving minutes like a slot machine stubbornly handing back small coins. I kept dismissing it until the interstate bottlenecked under overnight lane closures, and I took the exit to avoid waiting. 2 rights and a left, and my hood ornament lined up with the same blacktop I had promised myself not to use. The fog was already in place, pulled tight across the fields, as if it had been rehearsing. The radio was back on, AM band this time, a call-in show I listen to when I need a voice to prove I'm not the only person alive. The signal cracked without warning. The audio didn't go to snow, it went to a cadence, a dry mechanical pulsing that had nothing to do with weather. My brain wanted to count it. 4 beats. Pause. 4 beats. The hairs along my forearms lifted in a light static prickling, the way they do under a winter hat you've been sliding on and off. I focused on the lane. The edges bled. The yellow blink stepped out of the fog without ceremony and started keeping pace. Everything inside me dropped a half-inch, like an elevator settling too fast. It timed me effortlessly, taking my hand position and my blink rate and handing them back like a mirror with its own delayed logic. I felt stupid again and angry at myself for being afraid of something I couldn't name. I tightened my jaw until the joint clicked. When the windshield fogged from the inside, I thumbed the defogger and watched a clear patch spread outward from the vents. The surface was filmed in a way I recognized from blowing on glass as a kid. Moisture rose from my own breath and laid a fine coat over the tempered safety laminate. Lines appeared in the haze, finger tracks, like someone had written on the inside and let the residue sit until new condensation traced the grooves. I didn't need the cabin light to read it. The strokes were brusque and impatient. The message wasn't advice, it was a dare. I wiped my heel of my hand down the glass, out of habit, and smeared it into a useless blur. The blink to my right ticked through its 4 and hung in the pause, like it might be waiting for my answer. The back seat made itself known, the way an empty house does when a floor pops from temperature swing. The weight of the car changed in a small way that people who drive long distances will understand. You can feel it in how the shocks move when the road isn't perfect. That was the moment when fear turned physical. I didn't look. I didn't know if I was obeying a rule or inventing one, but it felt like the only rule that mattered. My heart compensated with its own stubborn cadence. I realized I was matching the blink. It was a stupid realization for such a serious moment, but it was true. My lungs wanted to do it too. Human bodies love a drumbeat, and here was one offered plain, nothing fancy. 4 on, a breath, 4 on, a breath. I forced myself off it by holding air in and counting off with a grip and release in my fingers, an off-time rhythm that felt clumsy and wrong. The blink kept doing what it was doing, which gave me something petty and victorious to feel in a place that had no use for victory.
The road doubled itself around then. The same patch of chevrons appeared on a curve I should have cleared. The same sagging mailbox loomed up like a prop in a haunted house loop. People talk about liminal spaces like bus stations at 3 a.m. A loop stretch of county blacktop in blinding fog is worse. It's an airport corridor that keeps feeding you the same gate numbers even though your legs keep moving. The only exit I found was a gravel opening I'd never noticed in daylight, a construction laydown yard abandoned for the night. I let the wheels fall into it without touching the brake, trying to make no decision the blink could answer. The fog stopped at the lip of the gravel like a line on a map. The yellow ticked through 4 last counts with a patience that felt a little like respect and a lot like the look someone gives you when you promise you'll be back. The windshield haze pulled stringy and left behind a sun-faded ring on the interior glass like a coffee cup left too long in one place. I slept at home that morning with the lights on, like a kid who ignores the fact that adult lamps cast adult shadows. My hallway has a cheap motion sensor nightlight that glows a dull amber. It had always been an afterthought until it learned to blink. 4 times, pause. 4 times, pause. I pulled it from the outlet, and it still flickered once, like a thing angry to be touched. I stood in the kitchen, feeling foolish and watched by my own house. The next day, at lunch, I drove the route in hard sunlight. No fog. Truck traffic was thick in the far lane, all chrome and wind buffeting, and the kind of heat that makes tar in the cracks smell like a roof job. Near the mile marker stood a roadside cross, weather-beaten wood with flaking white paint, the kind of memorial you see on every long stretch in America where people drive faster than their lives can hold. A solar barricade light sat zip-tied to the post. It was dead in the daytime. The initials burned into the paint had been touched up in black Sharpie by a hand that cared enough to try. The date was 3 years back. Whoever planted it did their best to keep it tended. A bouquet of plastic grocery store flowers had gone brittle. Ants worked the dirt as if it were any other square of ground. I filled up at the nearest gas station, a place with hand-lettered signs about no personal checks and cash price only. The kind of place where a styrofoam cup of coffee at 2 a.m. will save your life. The clerk watched the road the way people watch something they've learned not to talk about. I wanted to ask anyway, and didn't. I bought a crank-style flashlight at the aisle with the bungee cords and emergency triangles and stuck it in the door pocket. I made rules on the drive home like I was 12 again. No turn signal in the fog. No mirror when the blink is present. No counting inside my head. I said them the way you repeat a PIN number under your breath while you walk to an ATM. That night, I stayed off the county road. The next night, too. On the 3rd, I caved to habit, or something like it. Reroutes opened, lane closures closed, and there I was, 22 minutes from home, with my hood cut into a bright cone and the world pressed tight to the glass. The blink arrived, like a friend on schedule. My body recognized it, even before my brain raised an alarm. The smell in the cabin was clean ozone again. Not burning, not rot. Just that crisp lift you get when a sweater crackles. The rearview mirror belonged to the car more than to me, mounted where it always is, square and stupid. It took everything not to bring it into focus. People always say not to look down when they're high up. This was that feeling, but backwards, and centered on the soft part at the base of my neck. I doused myself with workmanlike thoughts. Keep both hands on the wheel, watch the rumble strip, keep a wobbly rhythm in your breath, and treat the blink like a metronome you're deliberately trying to play out of time. Condensation swelled on the glass again, and the lines in it sharpened like invisible knuckles drawing letters. I didn't read it all, not because I'm brave, but because my eyes wouldn't settle. Fear turned shallow and practical. If I counted the lanes to the next exit, if I set the hazard triangle in my head at a place I might have pulled off if there had been a shoulder, if I dug for the AAA card in the glove box with my mind, I wouldn't sit in the meat grinder where my imagination was making ground beef. My chest got tight, and I realized I'd been holding air too long trying to keep out of the blink cycle. I cheated a breath, and the world felt like it got another half-inch closer to the windshield. My heart stomped around my sternum, a surefire way to make the next panic attack more likely. At that point, the road rolled under me like it was on a trailer. No traction, no agency. Just that float you get when you hit black ice and your brain politely shuts off your options until it decides whether you live. The hazard switch under my thumb tempted me. I told myself all the good practical reasons to use it. You're in fog. You're in danger. You need to be visible from behind. I didn't press it. I've never been proud of resisting a button before. Somewhere behind me, something in the upholstery creaked on its own, like a car settling in a driveway after a hot drive, except the car was moving. That small wrongness stacked onto the fear and the anger and the logic and made a tower too tall to stand underneath. I got clumsy with the wheel for a breath or two, then forced myself back into the middle of the lane by aiming at the faint cat's eye reflectors and letting them be enough. I don't know how long the loop lasted. The odometer said numbers that didn't belong to the exits I saw. The phone froze for a span and then caught up, little blue arrow shaking like a scared dog on the map. Gravel shoulders appeared in the fog like they were being revealed as the world scrolled. I picked one that didn't look like a ditch and let all 4 tires crunch into it. The blink held station, refused to cross the line into the lot, and counted off 4 with what I swear felt like a long look from someone on a porch telling you to go on home then. The windshield glow thinned from the middle outward and left behind that same ghost of a circle that had bloomed on the hood the first night. When I finally slept, it was daylight, and I was too tired to do anything but drop into it. That evening, the motion nightlight in the hall set to work again. 4 blinks, a rest, 4 blinks. I went into the utility closet and pulled the crank flashlight out of its blister pack. I stood at the mouth of the hall and started turning the crank. The little dynamo in the handle whined, and the LED came up dull and a little sickly like all crank lights do, which was perfect. I made the beam pulse badly, on purpose, off rhythm, messy. The nightlight tried to stick to its cycle and couldn't. The hallway itself felt like a held breath. Something stepped in the quiet between my pulses, not in, not out, but across a plane I don't have words for. The smell of warmed plastic rose like a toaster had been left on. When I stopped, the ceiling showed a faint ring where the light had landed again and again. It wasn't soot. It wasn't dust. It felt like a skidding mark on a gym floor under your palm. A few days later, a small box landed in my mailbox with no return address. Inside were 4 cheap yellow barricade lights, the kind you'd find in a Harbor Freight bin near the register, the kind workers slap on sawhorses around potholes. They had those coin cell batteries shrink-wrapped and a sheet of paper folded once. It read like a joke, or a dare, or a note that assumes you'll understand because you're already in the club. I put the lights in the back of the hall closet and shut the door, like it might make a difference. I heard the softest little taps against the inside of the wood that night, counted 4, and waited for the 5th until I laughed at myself and went to bed. It never came. I told myself I wouldn't go that way again. I changed shifts, I swapped nights with another bartender, and took some day turns. I drank coffee at a waffle house after work and sat in a booth under fluorescent lights that flattened everything into safe beige. You can't live your whole life under fluorescent light. Weeks later, on a clear night that felt like a reward, I took the long way by accident and felt the line of trees on the right that means you're back where you started. The blink didn't appear. The air didn't get cold. The radio behaved like a well-trained dog. In the bathroom that night, I splashed water on my face and looked up without thinking. The mirror pulled the room into its square like it always does, which is to say wrong. The sense of someone standing too close to use the towel bar made the skin at the back of my neck pebble. I didn't need the blink to know the rhythm by then. It was in my pulse, and in the house wiring, and in the way my heart worked hard and then took a beat off like it had discovered a pattern it liked. I stood there watching myself not breathe for a count that wasn't mine. I'm not going to sell this as a ghost story because I don't know that it is one. It feels more like something mechanical that learned to copy human timing because it noticed we respond to it. If you've ever driven behind a guy whose blinker is almost in sync with your turn signal, you know the itch I'm talking about. Your brain wants them to match, and it'll do tiny, stupid things to get there. That's all this was at first, an itch, a bit, a beat. After that, it grew teeth I couldn't see, and a presence I could feel in the soft furniture of my life.
I keep a set of rules now. They're as silly and as serious as an athlete's superstition. I don't run the bathroom fan at night because the tick in the motor chases the pattern. I don't set the oven timer to multiples of 4. I flip the microwave off before it can beep the last count. I hold my breath at yellow lights and let it out deliberately, just to own the timing. I keep the crank flashlight in the door pocket of the car and my AAA card behind my license when I know I'll be crossing that stretch after midnight. I take the interstate when it's open. I take the long way when I can. Sometimes on a late run to the grocery store or a cheap flight home that puts me on the road at the wrong hour, I find myself back out there. The mile markers come in their order, the night is ordinary, I drive like everyone else, and it's almost boring. I don't want to see a blink. I don't not want to see it either. There's a sick kind of relief in being chosen, and a better kind in being ignored. On the best nights, nothing happens, and I get home and turn a lamp on and open the fridge and eat deli turkey standing up. On the bad ones, the house remembers a pattern I wish it would forget. A nightlight that fidgets, a furnace that knocks 4 times when it shouldn't, the sound of my own heartbeat laid out in the graph only I can read. People who have seen it say similar things when they think they're alone enough to say them. A ring in the clear coat, a fuse that pops without a short, a GPS arrow that spins like a dog chasing its tail, a memorial cross you swear moves a few feet over week to week, even though you know posts don't walk. I don't collect their stories because I'm not building a case. I don't want to prove anything to anyone. I write this down for the same reason you write a recipe on an index card and stick it to the fridge with a magnet, so you can lay your hands on it when you need it, so the instructions live somewhere outside your head. The instructions are simple. Don't give it your rhythm. Don't let it have your breath. Don't let the cheap yellow tell you how to count. If you mess up big. Go irregular, go ugly, go human. Wander in your own timing until you step off whatever loop it dragged under your wheels. I can't promise that keeps you safe. I can say it has kept me moving. And in the middle of the night on a road that feels longer than the map claims, moving is sometimes all survival buys you. There are stretches on the American grid that feel empty because the census says they're empty. They are not. They're full of patterns old as wooden bridges and new as LED highway signs. And if something out there learns you, it will knock at your life the way a neighbor knocks at your door. Polite at first, regular. 4 sharp taps and a pause like a smile. When I sit up in bed at 2:14, and the house is still, and the nightlight stays lit, and the fridge hum is honest, and my heart does that dumb 4 and rest anyway because it likes the comfort of the count, I lay a hand flat over my sternum and thump once with my palm to throw it off. It jumps. It resettles. It remembers being mine. Most nights that's enough. On the others, the fog presses the windows and turns the streetlights into halos, and the hallway glows the color of a barricade LED, and I feel my whole house waiting like a car at a long red light to see if I'll blink first.